Hi, welcome to EDSC 551. We are talking about chapters 13 and 14 today, violence and criminal activity. So, in our book, the ethical standards address this in the chapter that all students have the right to privacy and that they should be honored to the greatest extent possible while balancing their competent interest, which is the best interest of the student, the safety of others, and parental rights, and adhering to laws, policies, and ethical standards pertaining to confidentiality, disclosures in the school setting, which is all located in the preamble. All students have the right to a safe school environment, promoting autonomy and justice and freedom from abuse, bullying, harassments, and other form of violence. This is also located in the preamble. And school counselors should inform parents and guardians and other appropriate authorities when a student possesses a serious or foreseeable risk of harm to self or to others. So this is where we follow our um, bully prevention, our threat assessments, and also our suicide prevention policy and procedures. When feasible, this is done after careful deliberation and consultation with other appropriate professionals. The best practices indicate that you should not make these decisions solely, but that you make it in a team and that there should be a team for both areas, the suicide prevention team, which is your crisis prevention team, and then you have your threat assessment team. And as we stated before, and as I've shared with you in the course, you are the normally all mental health professionals in the school districts are the head person leading the suicide prevention team or the crisis team. And you are a member on the threat assessment team to make sure that if in any way there needs to be any type of mental health during the threat assessment, that you're there to provide those type of services to that individual. So, when we're school counselors do a risk assessment, we do it with caution. One of the things to remember is that we do not tell the parent that the student was high risk, medium, or low. That does not mean anything to them. What we are stating is the information that we received. And that is why you have a team to collect the information. With that team, you have a note taker, and the note taker is normally the administrator or administrator on duty or anybody who is in charge of the school. And that person notates what's heard in one private session and then another private session. And sometimes it requires additional sessions with other people and to come together because information is not clear. And so we want to get clear information from the student and, catch them like, okay, you were able to share this. Where were you able to share this information with one person? And, sometimes we continue to have that person kind of state that same information, the child to state the same information in the group. So it can be noted twice that the student did say that information to one of the mental health professionals, whether it be a risk assessment or whether it be a threat assessment. So school counselors should report parents, guardians, and appropriate their authorities when students disclose a perpetrator or perceived threat to their physical or mental well-being. So if someone is harming them, remember our three rules for confidentiality. We can keep it confidential, the information that is given to us during a counseling session, with the exception of three rules. If you're planning to cause harm to yourself, if you're planning to cause harm to others, or if you're planning to cause harm if someone is causing harm to you. So those are the three that we get involved, these teams that we're talking about, and when an individual needs to get outside services and we either contact the mental health professionals, maybe we call for a PAT team, or perhaps even maybe we call the police, right? Um, School counselors should monitor the use of assessment results and interpretations and take reasonable steps to prevent others from misusing the information. So we don't want others to get information. We want to inform all the people that are in contact with that student. And once we do a safety plan, once the student returns, we also want to make sure that that student is that the safety plan is only given to the people that the student has given you permission to share that safety plan with. So additional information we don't want to give out to others where they can use it against the student, stating that they have mental health issues. So these are important things to keep confidential. School counselors respect the confidentiality of parents as appropriate and in accordance with the student's best interest. If a parent doesn't wish that you reveal any information, then you need to keep that confidential. A lot of things that are said in your office are confidential by the parent, whether we're talking domestic violence, whether we're talking other things that are happening in the home. We don't want to share that information with the teachers. Sometimes the teachers know ahead of time. So if they do, um, they should encourage the parent to come and speak with you. And then that way we know that we're not passing the information around, but that we have verbal consent from the parent to share that information. Okay. And school counselors should inform appropriate officials in accordance with the school board policy of conditions that potentially are disruptive or damaging to the school's mission, personnel, and property while honoring the confidentiality between the student and the school counselor to the extent feasible, consistent with applicable laws and policy. So again, this is when we have those threat assessments where they plan to cause harm to other people in the school district or in the school. So we want to be aware of those things. So when we talk about school violence, it occurs in the school setting and is described as a violent act that disrupts the learning and has a negative effect on students, school, and the broader community. The school is the location where the violence occurs and not a type of violence. Some examples of school violence are bullying, cyberbullying. This happens frequently. We're talking about middle school to high school. It's also occurring in elementary schools. Fighting, punching, slapping, kicking, weapon use, gang violence, sexual violence, and then places in the school where violence can occur on school property, on the way to and from school, during a school sponsored event, and on the way to or from a school sponsored event. So, how big is the problem? So, this is some facts about school violence, what's happening in 2023. Female students and LGBT plus students experience more violence, signs of poor mental health, and suicidal thoughts and behaviors than their male and cisgender and heterosexual peers. And this is from our youth risk behaviors survey that's given. We also have our Healthy Kids survey that surveys fifth grade, seventh grade, and 11th grade. These are surveys that are very important to school counselors. From 2021 to 23, there were early signs that adolescent mental health is getting better, but there was also concerning increase in the students' experiences of violence at schools. And then from 23 to 13 to 23, 10-year trends were similar to what the data showed in 21. But there was a decrease in the students' use of substances, and there was an increase in students' experiences of violence, signs of poor mental health, suicidal thoughts and behavior, and students' sexual activity also decreased, but so did their protective sexual behaviors like use of condoms. So here's just a table of the trends that we just discussed and the percentages and how they have decreased and increased over time. And this is from 2009 to 2023. And then this is where we're tracking the prevalence of being sad or hopeless over time. We observed an increase from 2003 to 2023. So almost 2 decades. And then we also are tracking the prevalence of making suicide plans over time. We observed an increase from 2003 to 2023. And we know that the pandemic occurred in 21. In 20, we didn't get any data, 19. So we're seeing this seesaw starting at 16, and in the past as high as 18, and then kind of going up and down. The tracking the prevalence of exposure to neighborhood violence over the time. So just looking at your community and what they're reporting from their different communities as they take this. And so here's what's happening in the US. This is multiple students here. So from 21 to 23, we're noticing an increase of violence in neighborhoods. So, in order for us to identify and address threatening or concerning behaviors before they lead to violence, we need to report on a variety of concerning student behaviors and other suspicious activity that provides authorities and school personnel with the information they need to stop the violence before it occurs. So we need to just basically investigate everything. There is no bad intel. Basically, we want to make sure that we get the right information. Most recently, I heard that a student was cutting through another student and what she posted on the internet. And again, one of my coworkers had decided that she wasn't sure she should, disclose this information to me because it was heard through another situation and kind of interpreted on the through social media. And she decided to do it, and it was a great, I'm glad that she reported that to me due to the fact that the student was having challenges with cutting. And so we don't want it to get worse, but we want to make sure that she understands where she can go to get help. She wasn't doing it on a regular basis, but the importance is that she was able to share openly and honestly, and she has a good support network. So those are all good, situations. But just in case, just a reminder to her that school counselors are on campuses, and as she's moving into middle school, that she knows where to get help in case those feelings arise again. Schools should also establish a reporting system that is continuously monitored and allows for anonymous reporting. We do have that on our website for the Hawthorne School District, where parents can make anonymous reporting. And then having a threat assessment program, that's one thing that we just talked about on the previous slide. A multidisciplinary group process to evaluate the reports and respond to threats that can significantly reduce violence and include mass casualty attacks. So when you have a violence or something that is affecting the school. So here are some ways that we can prevent violence in schools. So all students have the right to learn in a safe school environment. School violence can be prevented. It requires addressing factors that put people at risk for protecting them from violence. Research has shown that prevention efforts by teachers, administrators, parents, community members, and even students can reduce violence and improve school environment. So just being out there, just being present sometimes decreases the school violence. The CDC has a technical package that can help communities and states prioritize prevention strategies based on the best available evidence. These strategies and approaches are in the technical package, which are intended to shape individual behaviors as well as relationships, families, school, community, and societal factors that can influence and protective factors or violence. They are meant to work together and be used in combination with multi-leveled, multi-sectored efforts to prevent violence. So violence in schools, the number of incidents of targeted school shootings appears to have increased every decade since the 1960s. Overall, the school shootings in 2024 that resulted in injury or death slightly outpaced last year's tally. And this is according to Education Weekly. 39 school shootings this year met the criteria for the tracker, and the second highest total for any year since Education Weekly has been tracking these incidents in 2018. Gun violence in and around schools weighs heavily on students and staff, close families and extended relatives, nearby neighbors, and the entire nation. So this is true whether the event generates weeks of headlines or strays just news articles, whether anyone dies or many people do, and whether it's been 25 minutes since the last incident or 25 years. So these factors weigh heavily on the community for many, many years to come, despite how big or small, if there were multiple deaths, small deaths, or whether it was 25 minutes ago or whether it was 25 years ago. So they're tracking how people feel after a shooting occurs in that community and at that specific school. So these, according to US News Weekly, these are the percentages of school shooting incidents and victims by year. As you can see in 2022, we had the highest victim injury and also the highest number of school shooting incidents. Here are 5 key strategies to help with violence. Form a threat assessment team. That's what we talked about earlier. Start with 1 or 2 school administrators, then expand the team to include representation from a variety of disciplines, including teachers, counselors, law enforcement, and mental health providers. You may not have all of this at your disposal, but you'll call each individual in as needed. Once the threat assessment is considered to be valid, then you get the outside people involved, such as the law enforcement, mental health providers, etc. Provide training for the team. Set up a schedule for the team to meet and train together regularly. Create a plan. Establish a comprehensive written plan and procedure for the threat assessment process. We've gone through legal counsel for this school year, which was very helpful because what the legal counsel is saying is just noting it, but not creating forms and policies is the best policy. Because once you have the team together and documentation, whether the documentation is handwritten, typed, on note paper, scratch paper, that is the most important part, that it was documented at the time, within the 24-hour period that you were notified of the threat assessment. And then keeping the child with you and making sure that you release them to their parents, making sure they don't have access to the weapons that they claim to want to use for that. Communication with stakeholders. Share the information about your school's threat assessment policy with the faculty, the staff, the students, and the families. So this should be an annual process so everyone understands when they hear the threat assessment, what to do and how to get the team together. And assess outcomes. Continually review the results and the outcomes associated with reported threats and other concerning behaviors to improve the threat assessment process. So this is an ongoing situation, and this is really important in middle school. I think sometimes people forget, especially if they haven't had any visual threats, and maybe one school in the district has had more than another. And so those other ones tend not to have a team together, not to gather. And it's really hard to get everything together at the last minute. So this is something that everyone should know what their role is and what role they play on the threat assessment team and when you're coming together. Because if you find out that it is a viable threat assessment and it's hard to get everyone in place at that moment when you need it, and in order for it to be documented properly. So the FBI utilizes the Secret Service 11 key questions in a threat assessment. Here's just some examples of questions. What are the students' motives and goals? Have there been any communication, suggestions, ideas, or intent to attack? Has the student shown inappropriate interest in school attacks, weapons, and or mass violence? Has the student engaged in any attack-related behaviors? Does the student have the capacity to carry out an act of targeted violence? Is the student experiencing hopelessness, desperation, and or despair? Does the student have a trusting relationship with at least one responsible adult? Does the student see violence as acceptable, desirable way to solve problems? Is the student's version of events consistent with his or her actions? Are there people concerned about the student's potential for violence? What are the circumstances? What circumstances might affect the likelihood of the attack? So these are the questions that the threat assessment team should be utilizing as they come together and do an assessment. This is the school shootings from 2018 and 2024 from Education Weekly. The dark color is the highest percentage. The lighter color is the lowest percentage. As you can see, California is purple. The ones with the pink are even the lower ones. The ones that are gray don't report. And it looks like Kentucky has the highest with the darkest color. So bystander intervention, we are all responsible and have a duty to responsibly intervene if we see harm occurring or about to occur. So as a bystander, that's anyone in the community that sees or hears anything about the behavior that could lead to harmful effects to the school. And we need to make sure that we have the ability to prevent the harm from occurring. All bystanders have a choice to make to intervene, move forward without trying to stop the situation. And here are 5 steps that bystanders can use for intervention. A person must notice the event. They must interpret it as a situation that needs intervention. They must assume responsibility to intervene. They must decide how to intervene, and then they have to act. So there's 3 ways that a bystander can choose to intervene: direct, check in yourself with the person being harmed or the person doing the harm. So check in with someone who looks uncomfortable, ask them if they're okay. Tell someone who is about to do something that they may harm another person that their behavior isn't acceptable. You can 2, delegate, get someone else to intervene. This intervention recognizes that sometimes other people may be better suited to intervene. Tell someone that they may want to go check in on a friend. Let the party host know that there is something going on and that they should look into it. Or the 3rd way is to distract, create a diversion to diffuse the situation. An example of that would be an action that stops the situation for a few seconds to give everyone a chance to recollect. Set off your car alarm, ask for directions, anything to kind of stop the person from moving forward. Next, we need to create a comprehensive prevention plan, foster a climate of respect and trust, reinforce it at all the levels of the school community. Positive behavior, respectful interactions, and pro-social relationships. Teach and encourage students to use conflict resolution, peer mediation, active listening, and other nonviolent ways to solve the problem. Develop an anti-bullying program and educate students, parents, teachers, staff, everyone, all stakeholders involved, what steps they should take if bullying should occur. Build relationships, build trusting relationships between the adults and the students to have a quality connection and respectful communication and frequent interaction. Promote communication, foster a climate where students feel safe coming and telling you information and sharing information about potential threat situations so that you can act. Identify concerning behaviors, ensure that students, parents, teachers, and staff are familiar with how to report behaviors and or communicate what they learned about that raises a concern. Maintain the threat assessment team. Make sure everybody knows their role and responsibility. Reinforce clear policies and procedures. Provide resources to manage concerning students, promote information sharing between the school and the community, emphasize the importance of having those adults who interact with students outside of the community to share information about a student if they become concerned, have a liaison with the law enforcement, foster a relationship. We have SROs on our campus, so that's our fostering relationship. Require consistent training among stakeholders, make sure that everybody is trained annually and knows what to do. So California has a zero tolerance policy that schools are a gun-free zone, and the federal law calls for the zero tolerance. Students who bring guns to school have to be expelled. This rule is rigidly enforced. On your first offense, you're done. Like many other states, California also has zero tolerance for additional offenses such as brandishing a knife, possessing controlled substances, and sexual assault. And these require mandatory expulsion laws that were passed. And states often add additional provisions to give local districts the option to suspend or expel students for a variety of other offenses. So you can do a stipulated expulsion, a regular expulsion, and districts can in turn adopt their own zero tolerance policies. Unless a student's misbehavior requires police involvement, a school maintains the official disciplinary option for that, which are detention, suspension, and expulsion. So chapter 14 talked about legal and ethical advocacy. So when we're advocating for our student, we are advocating for the academic success that every student is a key role of a school counselor and places them as the leaders in promoting school reform. Accountability demonstrates the effectiveness of the school counseling program in measurable terms, and the school counselor analyzes the school and the school counseling program's data to determine how students are different as a result of the school counseling program. So that's our RAMP certification. And we want to use this data and publish this data so that our jobs are more secure and that they know that we are giving and basing our counseling goals on data that we receive from the school. It should impact achievement, attendance, behavior. It should be analyzed by the school program's assessment to guide future action and improve future results for all students. So advocacy competencies for professional school counselors, they need to be aware of their advocacy roles. They are autonomous in their thinking and behavior, and there is an altruistic motivation with major concerns being students' well-being. Advocates are willing to take the risk to help individual students and groups of students to meet their needs. Family support and empowerment. The school counselor should recognize that parents and guardians are often the best advocates for their children, and their empathy extends to the parents. They join the parents in the advocacy for their children, and they empower families to adapt and grow. Social advocacy, the professional school counselor not only advocates for particular students and families, they also advocate to eliminate inequities and barriers affecting all people. They advocate for professions on behalf of their student clients and other student clients and non-clients. And our ethical disposition places a high value on professional codes of ethics. And we recognize that many advocacy dilemmas will occur and that the analysis of these ethical principles and laws is necessary for effective problem solving, and that the counselor with an ethical disposition possesses a personal ethics of caring. So knowledge of our resources helps us to within and out the school, and they exist in various forms from people, programs, institutions, agencies, community groups. And a professional school counselor should have knowledge of a wide range of resources that can be used in the advocacy process. The knowledge of the parameters, professional school counselors are knowledgeable of one, school policy and procedure, two, the legal rights of individuals and families, and 3, the scope of their practice. So this knowledge helps the school counselor assess problems and solve problems. And then the knowledge of dispute res resolution mechanisms. Advocacy often involves disagreement and conflict. Professional school counselors have the knowledge of mediation and conflict resolution strategies for working towards successful resolutions and disputes. Mediation and conflict resolution are also empowering ways to solve a problem. We also have knowledge of advocacy models, being aware of the different advocacy models and giving direction and focus to professional school counselors' advocacy efforts. Knowledge of various models gives counselors flexibility to various advocacy situations, and being aware of systems of change. That professional school counselors use a systems perspective to understand the systems and the subsystems that are inherent within a school and a society, and that they partner with subsystems such as the parents, students, school staff, and administrators in working for positive change. Our skills involve communication skills and collaboration skills. Our communication skills should serve them as a role to help advocate, listening with empathy, and helping the counselors to understand and assess problems effectively and communicate problems effectively. Collaboration is strong relationships that are necessary for resources and other members. So whether you're collaborating with outside mental health professionals, other professionals on your campus to maintain a positive relationship with the parents and other professionals, and advocating for them. Also, problem assessment skills, that counselors use a skill to assess and define problems and choosing their battles. Sometimes we won't be able to get all of the things done that we need to get done, but we need to just figure out which ones are the most needy and start there. Our problem solving skills, being able to come to a solution and make change and effectively bring resources to bear on problems. We can't do it all as one counselor or 2 counselors or even a team of counselors. Sometimes the battle is too large. And so we need to make sure that we bring on outside agencies to help us, especially if it is getting too large for us. Organizational skills, just being careful and detailed planning, gathering information, collection. Just no 2 people are the same. We can have similar situations, come from similar backgrounds, but don't assume that people of the same background have the same experiences, because they don't. And even if a percentage of students at your school represent the low socioeconomic and they came from the same culture and the same minority group, doesn't mean that they're experiencing life in the same manner. And then finally, our self-care skills, making sure that we take care of ourselves first, to ensure that we don't have burnout and that we're able to handle the problems, and that we have that high level of energy to continue to advocate no matter how big the problem is. All right, thank you so much. This will help you navigate through the final 2 chapters in our book, 13 and 14. Have a good evening.